Things were going really good between you two at the beginning, and he was showing a lot of interest, and now you're noticing that he's starting to pull back. He's more distant with you. Here's why. When you first met him, your confidence was up here. You were feeling really good about yourself. You weren't emotionally attached to anyone. You were focused on you. However, when things naturally developed between you, you started to develop emotions, which is normal. But you more than likely started entertaining the story in your mind of, what if this doesn't work out? What if he leaves? What if he finds someone else? What if I'm not good enough?
That's not my problem. It's yours.
Well, it sounds to me like that's a personal problem there, sweetheart. You've been spending a lot of time with Chad, Tyrone, Raphael, Marco, Chang, Wang, Takeda, and Bucho for so long that you really have developed some massive amount of trust issues to the point where you can't even trust this guy to be loyal, even though he's shown you nothing but signs of pure loyalty. So naturally, you're going to start having your doubts and looking for red flags because you'd rather sabotage yourself than actually accept that you have a good guy in your life. I mean, you said it yourself. Even just after a couple of months in, you start to suspect that he's already looking elsewhere, when most self-respecting men don't really do that. It's only the players that do, which just goes to show that you are trying to lock down a player. And lady, if I were to say you were playing checkers in the middle of a chess game, that would be a massive improvement over what you're currently doing. And we don't really even need to look that hard to find that out. I mean, all we gotta do is just take a look at your rogues gallery of former situationships, and we have a fairly clear-cut picture as to why you have massive trust issues.
You're spending majority of your day focusing on them, worrying about them, waiting on them to reach out to you, make the plans, anticipating when you're going to see him next. You're taking yourself out of this equation and you are putting all the focus on him. And what happens when you do this is naturally he's going to focus on himself too. He didn't shift the way he's acting towards you because he changed. He's mirroring back your energy to you. The way that this world works, the way that energy works is people are always mirroring back to you who you are being and how you think about yourself, how you think they perceive you.
I knew you'd notice that.
Oh, I know that. And I knew you'd know I'd know you knew.
And here we have a clear-cut case of rules for thee, but not for me when it comes to modern women. And God, this one is just so blatantly obvious. How many modern women out there say that their man must be over 6 feet tall, must work out regularly, must eat right, have his finances in order, must deal with all of his personal baggage? Meanwhile, they're sitting around and doing nothing, and it's only when they start scrolling through TikTok that they find out that maybe I should be focusing on myself as well, but you can't even do that right. What you call focusing on yourself typically involves drinking significantly more alcohol and going to a club as you drunkenly flirt with men and you try to net yourself a better guy. That's pretty much all you really do. Well, that and therapy, where you just go to a guy twice a week to endlessly complain and then take none of his advice, but that goes without saying. And yet, for some reason, even when you have massive trust issues that you're clearly not willing to work on, it is still the man's fault that you have absolutely nothing to offer him. So it just goes to show no matter what a man does, even if he's being loyal and planning everything, he can still do nothing right.
You want to turn the tables around, you gotta start putting all of that focus and attention that you've been putting on him lately and put it back towards yourself. Remind yourself on how incredible your life is without him. You want to make sure that you're living a vibrant life on your own so that he feels that it is a privilege for him to be a part of it. And that can't happen if you are spending all your time feeling so privileged to be a part of his life and waiting on him to show up a specific way.
Get serious, that never works.
So you're just going to double down on your selfish attitude. Yeah, that's really not going to work because you really have to understand something. When you're sitting around and watching your phone and waiting for him to text you and waiting for him to plan all the dates and waiting for him to pull all of the weight in the relationship, that is the ultimate definition of selfish. You are not willing to lift a finger to make the relationship work. So naturally, when you're not reciprocating anything or showing any form of appreciation of being in this man's life, you're just going to go ahead and get bitter and do nothing. And in return, that guy is just going to start doing other things because he realizes that you are not worth the amount of time and energy he's been putting into the relationship. And then ultimately, you're going to break up with him because you feel like he's not doing enough when you've done literally nothing and you're pissed off about it. You can't get angry at the guy when you're the one holding the pew-pew and repeatedly shooting yourself in the foot.
Shut your dirty little mouth!
Okay, so this has been bothering me all week, but I couldn't put words into it until right now. This thing about people saying not all men, that is being like, you're right, it's not all men, but it's enough men, it's not all men. It is all men. In the same way that it's all white people.
That's racist!
It is all men. Every single man was raised in a society that's inherently sexist and supports rape culture and allows you to sexually harass women and think it's okay. It is all men, and if it's not you, then it's someone that you are friends with or someone that you associate with, and they've done it and you've witnessed it and you didn't say something. It simply is all men.
You need to face the fact. You're a racist. A racist. You, not me. I'm not the racist.
You know, it always fills me with the warm and fuzzies whenever a modern woman flies off the handle and decides to accuse me of crimes that I've never committed, and also being guilty by association for crimes that were committed by men that I don't know and would never associate with. So I feel quite confident in saying, no, woman, it is in fact not all men. I honestly think that a majority of the men out there will believe that violent forced coitus is wrong, and judging a person by the color of their skin as opposed to the content of their character isn't cool and really should not be part of everyday society. But thanks to modern idiocy, the table is flipped so that if you're a man living in Western culture, you're guilty until proven innocent. And apparently the only way to show that you're innocent is to perform vigilante justice, which is incredibly illegal, profoundly dangerous, and not worth it at all. And even if men were to show they were quote-unquote allies by doing this absurd thing, you would just say that they're not doing it the right way. So in reality, you're just being a victim to be a victim.
I'm tired of us having to pander to the men that just want to make the conversation about themselves when we have to be afraid of every single man we see on the street because they could all be threats. I'm so sick of women having to change the tone of the way that they speak to make sure that it is soft and digestible for other men. Men, if you're watching this, it is your responsibility whether or not I make you feel comfortable in this movement or not.
Emotional, damn it! I got a question for you, sister. Do you legitimately think that men just walk around with this fake bubble of safety, just not perceiving anybody as a potential threat? You do realize that the majority of violent crime is men on men, right? We actually do live in a more dangerous society than you ever possibly could. We aren't afforded the luxuries of the laws that were catered specifically for you. And you could walk up to a guy, grab him by the crotch, and not only would you get away with it legally, you would be able to make it into comedic fodder, and any man who says that's assault is just told to lighten up because it's just a compliment. And on a separate note, when have you ever softened your language to have a discussion about men's issues? Any type of issue that a man has is immediately disregarded because you deem to be the most important person in all of society. In fact, anytime a man does bring up an issue, you just turn the tables and say that your issues are more important. So a discussion can't be had here, even though one really does need to be had. But if that happened, then the countless hours you spent binge watching true crime dramas would have been all for nothing. So I get why you don't want to have a conversation about it.
I'll just move to North Korea. I'll just move to North Korea. Okay? Okay. I'll just move to North Korea.
Let me convince you to take me on a date. I wear minimal makeup and I'm all natural. I can cook and clean. I play video games topless. And I'm very submissive. Yes or no?
No.
You know what, woman, I will admit, the idea of me sacrificing every single ounce of my dignity and self-respect to be seen with you in public is appealing. Unfortunately, I'm just too busy. Yeah, I actually just got a fascinating question from a Patreon member that I'd love to address instead. David Small asks, Dear Locke, I just went on the worst date of my life. It was going well, and she was pretty and slim. We were getting along, and then she said, David, when I meet a guy I really like, I have to tell him that I was abducted by aliens and they changed me. Now I can only have little gray babies. I politely left, but this haunts me, Locke. In Sigma Sector, are there girls who do this? Was I one night of bedroom fun away from a crib full of gray babies? Do aliens come to Earth to seek men's seed? Please help. Thanks, David. Oh, David, I have to admit, if I was ever on a date with a woman and she said she can only have gray babies, my first question would be, how in the hell do you even know that, lady? You know what? On second guess, I really don't feel like learning about your gray babies, and then I would leave with her paying the check. But that's really not an answer to your question, so I apologize for being rude, because the answer to your question is kind of complicated. In short, yes on one account and probably on the other. That girl in question was not abducted. She went on that ship willingly. And I know this because the only gray bipedal aliens that exist in Sector Sigma are the Chad Corey of Partimus 4. And these are some pretty strange dudes. They're built like Chad, they dress like Chad, and they talk like Chad, but the only difference is they have gray skin. Well, that and their eyes are blacker than the vacuum of space. And they are the quintessential party aliens of Sector Sigma. But this is strictly for religious purposes. Most Chad Corey are pretty laid-back dudes. They'll hang out with you, buy you a beer, and talk about Red Brown movies for hours on end. They have your back in intergalactic space brawls, and their Mario Kart skills are nothing to be trifled. Now, Sector Sigma is home to all sorts of crazy religions, but their god, Partimus Maximus, demands that his followers go forth and party in his name. So whenever they're bored, they deck out their nightclub UFOs and head off to pick up some chicks. And they usually end up in Earth about 8 times out of 10 thanks to their modern women being so stupid that they'll overlook their gray skin and limited English abilities to party on their spaceship, which looks just like an overpriced nightclub. I mean, you should see it. They look just like your nightclubs on Earth, even down to the suspiciously stained toilet stalls. And modern women hear the god-awful music, they see the seizure-inducing light systems, and they smell the natural high-end cologne scents permeating from their pores, and the next thing you know, blood is rushing to their reproductive organs, and they're grinding up against these guys in 10 minutes flat. And at that point, the gray skin is just a formality. They actually see it as cute and adorable. So anyway, after the inevitable ritualistic drunken coitus, the Earth girls are sent back to planet Earth with a massive hangover, $6 in assorted loose change for bus fare, and a minimum of 12 miles for their ceremonial walk of shame, as per the Chad Corey tradition. Their DNA is also slightly warped so that any type of child they bear will end up becoming a Chad Corey party baby. Now, some of these women will try to baby trap a Chad Corey party priest, but the joke's on them. Paternity laws don't exist in Sector Sigma, and no modern woman wants to openly admit to raw dogging a space alien because it was $9 Long Island night in the Aliens UFO Club. Now, in terms of gray babies, yeah, it's been known to happen, but modern women will always say they were forcibly abducted into the UFO nightclub, and they will say they were forced to drink cheap alcohol against their will, and you don't even need to worry about the aliens because even though she had her fun, you're still good enough to financially support her gray freaks of nature. Hope that clears it up for you, David. Thank you so much for asking the question and for your continued support on the bounty board over on Patreon for making this segment possible. Thanks a lot, David. You are tops. And of course, thank you to all of the members of the bounty board for your support and your generosity as well as we continue to hammer out awesome content like this. I could not do this without your support. All hail! And if you're interested in supporting the channel, check out the bounty board over on Patreon. I've got separate tiers where for $5 a month, you can get access to exclusive content just like this. For an extra $15 a month, you can also ask me a personalized question. I'll be more than happy to make a segment in your name. The link is in the pinned comment down below.
Believe me, it's worth it.
A great marker of growth of your prefrontal lobe developing maybe as a woman is no longer going for the artsy men, because you know the artsy men are the biggest divas. They're not providers. They're actually the biggest nuisance in the world once you get to know them. Like, I just came across this guy on Hinge and I'm like, wow, gorgeous. Like, the most perfectly curated Hinge profile. Literally, like, at the end of the day, like, I am a human being. I can acknowledge that he is just fine as, but I chose not to swipe. And in the past I would have, but I'm aware that every time I've dated an artsy man, he like wants princess treatment, and frankly no.
Right.
Oh, come on, woman. You're not looking for a provider. You're looking for a dude you can walk all over, disrespect, and have him pay you for the privilege. I mean, that's what this is all about here. A provider mindset means actually giving you a home, making sure that you're safe, and taking care of you. That's what a real provider is, but you're not looking for that. You're looking for a man who makes a boatload of money, who has no problem with you spending it on shopping sprees for stuff that you don't need, and him not saying a word about it. And you're thinking that by swiping left on some dude who's well-built and well-dressed and incredibly confident is some type of a flex. It's really not, because you're emasculating him in the process, which just goes to show how bitter and incapable you are of actually caring about somebody. I mean, look at this concept of men wanting princess treatment. All it really is men wanting respect and reciprocation for the care that they're giving a woman, and modern women are so incapable of this that they get offended at the idea that they'll actually have to do something to show their appreciation to a guy outside of wasting his oxygen and food.
Because the reality is the only amazing experiences I've had dating men is where they are in their masculine provider mentality, like me a little bit more, and artsy men just, I fear they're not like that, because likely they're a model or an actor as well, and there's so much emphasis placed on the way that they look and them being the center of attention, where you'll never be the star. And before you come at me and say this is a generalization, I'm aware, but I'm basically never wrong with this. Like, try to find an artsy man who's also a provider. Like, and text me when you do.
Day and night she talks, each word more useless than the next.
Maybe I'm wrong on this one, but I think the ultimate sign of masculinity is a man who's willing to put his foot down and stand up for himself whenever a woman complains that he's not spending enough money on her. These are men who work incredibly hard for everything they have, and they're just expected to dump all of it into a bottomless pit for an ungrateful woman who's just going to judge him no matter what. And I just have to ask you something, woman. In your endless quest to find a masculine man in his provider mindset, I hear you talk about how many successful dates you've been on, but how many of those men actually turned into something more? Like, how many times have you had a boyfriend who actually kept this mindset? When have you actually gotten married to a guy and maintained that relationship successfully? Wait, what's that? 0? Well, color me shocked, woman. There is not a masculine, self-respecting man alive who's going to allow that kind of treatment that you're proposing against him. That's just not how it works. Self-respecting men want a woman who's trusting, friendly, and faithful, and you're none of those. So good luck in your pursuit, sister. Let us know how many cats you have at the age of 50.
Guys, I think I've just experienced my most embarrassing moment and I feel awful. Basically, I'm walking to the doctor's on my lunch break. I see these 3 schoolgirls walking as well. It's 3:20, school's finished. And they're walking along the road and they kind of come up to that traffic light crossing where you press the button and wait. And there's a guy behind them and he looks kind of shifty and he's kind of hanging back. He just looks a bit weird. And anyway, he kind of stops himself to then cross as if he wasn't going to cross, but he's crossing because they're crossing.
Bullshit! Bullshit! Well, it sounds to me like some single woman has seen one too many episodes of the British version of Law & Order. I mean, lady, what exactly does Shifty look like? What was so suspicious about this guy? Let me guess. He may have been a little bit overweight and was balding. Maybe he had a beard. Maybe he was dressed casually. Oh, and old glasses. Let's not forget the old 80s style glasses. That's always a dead giveaway for modern women. And naturally, your first inclination is just to automatically assume that this man is nefarious and is following these girls with less than savory purposes, based on absolutely 0 evidence. So, you know, just pretty much your average modern woman. It would be one thing if he was taking a whole lot of secret photos or saying a lot of unsavory things, but that's not what happened here. You just immediately assumed the worst case scenario without any form of evidence whatsoever. And this is the plight of the average man as he's just trying to go about his day. He can't even walk down the street without a woman judging him for something incredibly horrible. And it really just sucks that we can't even walk down the street without being accused of imaginary crimes.
So alarm bells ring in my head. I'm like, oh my god, these 3 schoolgirls, they're going to be followed home. Like, they look quite young, maybe like 12. So then I turn around and I go to the crossing to cross with them, to then hopefully speak to them at the other end of the crossing and say, girls, and just pretend that I know them, try and let this man pass, and then say, I'm really sorry to scare you, but there was a bit of an odd guy. Off you go, kind of thing. It just felt like something that I had to do. Anyway, that's exactly what I did. So I crossed the road.
Oh, that's not right. No.
Wait a second, let me get something straight here. You decided to take it upon yourself to assume that this man was some type of a predator, and your plan was to actually cut in front of the predator and tell these girls that they were being followed, and you didn't expect anything to happen to you? I mean, whatever happened to all men are violent and that all men are sick, twisted psychopaths? It never once crossed your mind that this guy would actually apprehend you in the middle of the street and would actually try to go after these girls? I mean, women like you never shut up about that kind of stuff. You feel unsafe safe all the time, and yet you felt so empowered and so invincible that you decided to butt into something that was clearly none of your business based on evidence that is circumstantial at its absolute best. So which one is it, lady? It can't be both. Either you're a victim and you feel unsafe and you live in a dangerous society where all men want to jump you, or you're an empowered boss bay ass queen who's fighting the patriarchy by shoving her nose in business where it clearly doesn't belong. I mean, take your pick. Not that it really matters, because both of those scenarios are completely meaningless and make no sense anyways.
And I said, girls, can I just quickly speak to you for a second? And then this guy like hung back and kind of lingered and was watching, and I said, I'm really sorry to scare you, but there's a bit of a funny guy who he's following you, I think, or I just wanted to hold you back and just let him pass. The guy's like kind of watching, and then the girl's like, oh, that one. I'm like, yeah. She goes, that's my dad. I went, oh my god, I'm so sorry. And then I said to him, I'm so sorry, sir, I thought you were a bit of a funny guy. But
I feel really bad for that kid's father, because some random woman he doesn't even know just walked up to his children and then accused him of being a child predator. I mean, who does that? That is totally not cool. And you're trying to say, oh, it was just a mistake. No, lady, that was lunacy. And then to add insult to injury, you said, oh my god, I am so sorry. It's just you look like a funny guy. It's like, how is that supposed to make that guy feel? He is completely innocent in all of this, and even when you're trying to apologize, you still can't pass up the opportunity to insult him and denigrate his character by saying that he looks like a predator. And you're still acting like the victim because you feel so guilty for accusing a man of being a monster to children. And that is just completely messed up, because that blind accusation that you made can have some significant real-world ramifications, and you're acting like it's no big deal. That man could have gone to prison for years because of your blind assumptions.
I just was a bit concerned because you were hanging quite far back and it just didn't look like you were with them. And they laughed and said, thank you so much, that's really kind of you, like really appreciate that. And the dad was really sweet, but I was like, oh my god, I've offended a guy. I think that he looks like a weirdo or like a predator, and I thought I was doing a really good deed. I like really had like this like maternal like no, like I need to look after these girls. And it then so happened that it was one of their dads. I've got myself a comfort hot chocolate because I feel so embarrassed and awful, and I hope that I haven't ruined their day. Well, I think they were sweet and fine, but I hope I haven't ruined his day.
You! I will think of you as I throw up into the toilet.
No, woman, you don't get to do this. You don't get to fish for sympathy and validation because you accused an innocent man of an unspeakable crime. You honestly think feeling guilty somehow absolves you of this horrible thing, but no, it doesn't. You humiliated this man in front of his child for literally no reason outside of an assumption that this man was a predator because you found him physically unattractive. And the worst part is he had no choice but to take your horrific accusation in stride, because if he raised his voice and justifiably stood up for himself, then you could call the police and he could be arrested for abusing women because you did something that was incredibly uncalled for, and you wouldn't even get so much as a slap on the wrist. You'd be given a blanket and a free cup of hot cocoa, as well as the number for a counselor to help you get over your trauma. And what's really disgusting is that there are children's schools all over the UK that are constantly being stalked by child predators from other countries, and they are given a free pass every single time. Where's your bleeding heart for them, woman? You know what? Just go about your business and leave the men in peace. It's the least you can do, you cretin. And that's gonna do it for today's video, gentlemen and gents. And as always, if you find that my particular brand of comedy is bringing you to the brink of laughter, then why don't you scroll on down and click that like and subscribe button, ring the notification bell, leave a couple of comments, and make sure to share this video so we can give the good old-fashioned middle finger to the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much for checking out the new video, gentlemen and gents, and until next time, peace out, homies.